on Joe Rogan, JD Vance decided to talk about women. And I think that was a bad call considering how he's generally done on that topic. But here he is talking about women's rights. Take a look.
Like the concept in the zeitgeist is that abortion had always been, Roe v. Wade had always been the law of the land, and then all of a sudden that was taken away, and you have these religious men who are trying to dictate what women can and can't do with their bodies.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, again, I understand that. I understand the pushback against that, but I think you can go, like with so many other issues, you can go way too far about it, and it becomes trying to celebrate something that at the very best, if you grant, I think, every argument of the pro-choice side, it is a neutral thing, not something to be celebrated.
I think there's very few people that are celebrating, though.
Yeah, that was weird because that was Joe Rogan sounding honest and sane. And just objectively true. People aren't celebrating abortion, you ridiculous goofballs. They just want to have control over what happens to their bodies and their life. And JD Vance, that's him in the mode of trying to be like, I'm a moderate. Like, no, I get it, but you can go too far. So what he's saying is, I get women being angry that now if they're raped by their uncle, they have to bear the child or whatever. But like, come on, dial it back a little bit. Sometimes you go too far because now you have to raise your rapist child. Like, could you just dial it back a little bit? I don't think that's the moderate position that he thinks it is. But anyway, they did continue to talk about this. So let's jump to a little bit more of that conversation.
That's concerning to me, that we can make, if there's a place in the country where it's legal to have a medical procedure and you live in a state where it's not legal, that your state can decide what you can and can't do with your body, which is essentially based on a religious idea. And a lot of I'm not criticizing it one way or another, but I'm saying that a lot of what this choose life thing is about, that life is precious and life is sacred and life begins at the moment of conception. And some people agree with this, but other people disagree with this. And it seems to be a lot of it is based in religion. My concern is using that to dictate whether or not a person can legally travel to another state. I don't think the government should be monitoring where you travel or what you do when you travel, as long as that thing is legal. And I'm concerned with this idea that you could be prosecuted for it in your state for doing something that's legal somewhere else.
I don't like the idea, to be clear. I've not heard of this, maybe as like a possibility, but not as something that actually exists in the law. But I've not heard of somebody being arrested, and I don't like the idea of arresting people for moving about the country. I haven't heard of them doing it either. I've heard of the discussion. I've heard as a threat.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't heard of it in the same way that Donald Trump hasn't heard the Puerto Rico joke. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Republicans in state legislatures all over the country, particularly in the South, are trying to do this. Full court press. I haven't really heard about it except as a threat. No, they're trying to do it right now. That is what they're trying to do. And again, Rogan was not 100% reasonable there, because like he's describing all of these insane infringements on people's rights. And he is admitting that people have a problem with it, but he's like, I don't have a stance one way or the other. I don't know, what you're describing seems terrible. Shouldn't you have a stance against that? But whatever, he's the good guy, I guess, at least in that video. And so like, this is why people do not want these guys in charge. And JD Vance, the best he can do is to still seem super disconnected, and I would say condescending towards the people who don't want their rights being stripped away. But Sharon, what do you think?
It's so gross. Depending on what audience he's in front of, he morphs and he changes, and it's just so disgusting. Of course he knows what we're talking about. Of course he knows what, there's probably been thousands and thousands of segments about the Texas legislature. I mean, it's crazy. Tracking women, tracking their pregnancies. And by the way, you guys never get tracked. When are they going to track the men? These women must raise these babies, some of them with incredible health ailments that are just something that you're not going to recover from. And if life began at, exception, why does the mother's life not matter? How come the mother, this whole thing is nutty. And Joe does seem quite sane and regular in that interview, with the exceptions that you noted. But at the end of the day, it's a circular conversation. He's not getting anywhere with this Vance guy, this tricky Yale lawyer guy. You're not going to get anywhere with him because he's just completely dishonest.
Yeah, look, and also the life starts at conception. That is a comment that means effectively nothing. I know that like pro-life people think that it's a super relevant thing to say. It doesn't mean anything. It's like having a discussion about whether you believe in love at first sight or whatever. It's like, okay, you can make noises out of your face hole about that. That has no scientific like significance. It certainly has no legal significance. It doesn't at all. Like we can try to figure out exactly when we think that biologically a life begins. That's not what the law is about. And the vast majority of pro-life people don't at the end of the day think that. If you think that there is some sort of moral significance to life starts at conception and that's the end of the conversation, why do you support any of these exceptions? Did the life of the child born as a result of non-consensual incest start at conception or not? Because if it did, either that is a morally significant point or it is not. If you believe that there are still lots of conversations potentially to be had after that fact, and maybe you're being forced into it because it seems really grotesque and sociopathic to say that people should have to give birth to the results of rape and incest and all that stuff, then it isn't as significant as you want to pretend it to be. Life starts at conception is not a scientific statement. It is not a moral statement. It is a bumper sticker that makes people who want to restrict women's rights feel temporarily a little bit better about what they're doing. That's it. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.